Okay, let's just dive right into it. Have you ever stopped to think about how weird the modern world actually is? It's kind of this massive, deeply confusing paradox. Just think about it for a second. We have access to literally everything. We've got more conveniences, more ways to connect, more content, and more answers right in our pockets than any generation in human history. And yet, despite having the entire world at our fingertips, so many of us are walking around with this profound, unshakable feeling of emptiness. It's like we have everything, but we feel entirely empty. We just feel completely adrift. Seriously, have you noticed that? Just look around. We are more exhausted, more anxious, and way more stressed out than ever before. We spend hours every single day consuming these endless streams of videos, news cycles, hot takes, and highlight reels of other people's wild successes. We're laying in bed at 11 p.m., literally drained, completely exhausted, but we just keep scrolling, right? We're searching for this answer that we can't even put a name to. We've got a million different productivity hacks telling us how to optimize every single waking second. We're constantly swiping to the next big idea. But despite all this access, we've honestly never felt more disconnected from ourselves. Fewer and fewer of us actually have any clarity on who we really are or what we actually want out of life. And honestly, it makes total sense that we feel this way. Just look at the absolute barrage of conflicting advice we get hit with from the moment we open our eyes. You grab your phone and someone is literally yelling, "You need to be more productive, optimize your morning routine." You swipe, and someone else says, "No, you need to slow down, practice self-care, just take it easy." Swipe again, "Start your own business, escape the matrix." Swipe again, "Don't take risks, find a stable job, put your money in a safe index fund." It is absolutely relentless. We are just bombarded with all these expectations without even a single second to pause and breathe. So here's the crucial point. Maybe the real problem isn't a lack of information. Actually, scratch that. It's definitely not a lack of information. We do not need another life hack. The problem is the excess. Our minds simply weren't built to process this heavy, nonstop stream of external stimuli without ever taking a break. Little by little, usually without even realizing it's happening, you absorb all of these incredibly loud external voices until they just slowly drown out your own inner voice. And when that happens, you find yourself facing one of the most confusing and painful experiences of modern life: a total, profound loss of identity. This brings us to the real core of our modern crisis, and it's a pretty brutal contrast. A lot of people are completely lost right now simply because they spend so much time observing everybody else's lives that they entirely forget to observe their own. You aren't lost because you aren't smart enough or because you're incapable. We know exactly what everyone else is doing, right? We know what they had for breakfast, where they went on vacation, all their huge career milestones. But then we look in the mirror and ask ourselves one really simple question: what do I actually want? And we just draw a total blank. When you lose that internal compass, when you genuinely don't know who you are anymore, other people's opinions suddenly gain this massive, terrifying amount of power over you. You enter what we can call the invisible prison. This is a state where you are essentially just reacting to life based entirely on the fear of being judged, rather than standing firm in your own personal values. You literally stop doing things you actually enjoy because you're terrified of what people might think. You don't start that passion project because you're paralyzed by some imaginary criticism. You become a full-on prisoner to opinions that might not even exist outside of your own head.
Let's just pause and let that really sink in for a moment. What if your absolute biggest regret in life isn't that you tried something bold and failed, but that you were so terrified of judgment that you simply never tried at all? Living constantly on the defensive, always trying to dodge criticism, means you aren't really living. You're just surviving. You're merely reacting to your environment, surviving on the terms set by the loudest voices in the room, and making your choices rooted entirely in fear rather than your own authentic values.
But eventually, the pain of living like that just gets way too heavy. You hit a breaking point. You realize you absolutely have to reclaim your life. So you decide, okay, that's it. I'm building better habits. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to take care of my health. I'm going to live consciously. But then, almost immediately, it gets incredibly frustrating. Waking up at 5 a.m. is ridiculously hard. Sticking to that new routine feels completely awful. So why do we give up so easily when we finally try to make that necessary change? Well, the psychological journey of making real transformation always follows a pretty specific path. It kicks off with immense excitement. Your motivation is sky high, but almost instantly, bam, you hit this massive wall of resistance and discomfort. And honestly, this is right where the vast majority of people just throw in the towel. They hit this friction and they mistakenly believe that because it feels uncomfortable, it means they are doing something wrong.
They think the discomfort is a sign they're failing, so they quit way before they ever reach the adaptation phase, and eventually, natural action.
The honest truth? Transformation almost always gets worse before it gets better. We really need to normalize this struggle. Every single meaningful change requires a totally grueling period of adaptation. And you know why? Because the human brain is inherently lazy. It desperately wants to conserve energy and just repeat known, comfortable patterns. Whenever you try to build a brand new version of yourself, your brain literally throws a tantrum. It fights you tooth and nail because you are forcing it out of its super comfortable automatic mode. So right now, you are caught up in this brutal tug of war. On one side, you have your autopilot mind, which just wants to keep repeating those known, easy patterns. And on the other side is your conscious mind, which is trying so hard to endure the friction of training a totally new reality. It is exhausting, but you have to validate that exhaustion. Enduring that heavy initial friction is literally the only bridge to the other side. If you can just learn to sit with that discomfort, eventually what felt impossibly difficult will become entirely natural. Now, to actually survive that friction, we have to pivot toward what is probably the most crucial life skill you can possibly develop in the modern age, and that is aggressively protecting your own attention. You literally have to guard it with your life, because the golden rule of the mind is so simple. Where attention goes, energy flows. Your mind is basically like a garden, and whatever you choose to water is exactly what is going to grow. Think about what you are feeding your mind every single day. If you direct all your attention toward fear, your fear is inevitably going to grow. If you constantly feed your mind comparisons by scrolling through everyone's highlight reels, your feelings of inadequacy are going to multiply. If you feed that constant loop of worry, your anxiety spikes. But if you consciously choose to feed presence, if you can learn to just observe your thoughts without blindly believing every single one of them, your mind will finally begin to decelerate. Feeding presence means actually feeling the sunshine on your face without needing to pull out your phone and take a picture of it. True peace starts by actively choosing what gets your energy. And a huge part of protecting that energy is understanding this one absolute truth. So much immense, completely unnecessary suffering comes from a really simple point of confusion. We mix up what we control with what we don't. We waste so much precious energy trying to control other people's opinions, trying to rewrite the past, or trying to secure these guarantees from a future that hasn't even happened yet. You don't control any of that. What you do control are your choices, your attitudes, and how you decide to respond to the life right in front of you. When you finally stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you reclaim your power. So I want you to take a deep breath. Let this really sink in. You are not directionless. You are not broken. You are not incapable. You are just mentally overloaded. You are carrying around the weight of 1,000 voices that aren't yours. You absolutely do not need to consume more content today. You don't need more opinions. You don't need more external stimuli. What you need right now is a fundamental shift in how you approach your daily life. See, we live in a society that is completely obsessed with addition. When we feel bad, we automatically think we need to do more. Add more habits, watch more videos, consume more content, buy more things just to fill that void. But real, lasting transformation actually requires the exact opposite. It requires subtraction. It requires stepping away, setting incredibly fierce boundaries, embracing silence, removing the noise. An overloaded mind is always running, always looking for something out there to fix an emptiness inside. But a conscious mind learns how to hit pause. And that brings us to the most empowering realization of all. Change happens when you remove the excess noise. Real change isn't about adding another complicated layer to your already chaotic life. It is about stripping away the expectations, the fears, the comparisons, and all that endless chatter that honestly doesn't even belong to you. It's about stopping that desperate search for external fixes to an internal problem. So I want to leave you with this one final lingering thought to reflect on today. If you just stopped running, if you put down the phone, if you set your boundaries and finally turned off all the noise of the world, what could you hear? Maybe, just maybe, you'd finally be able to hear who you really are. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you in the next one.